It's the latest, greatest and fastest hypercar ever to pop out of Christian von Koenigsegg's sizable head.
This is the latest, greatest and fastest hypercar ever to pop out of Christian Vonnick's sizable head. The Jesko wasn't just a machine. It was a statement. But weeks after its arrival, smoke and fire on the streets outside Nafplio, Greece turned that dream into global panic. Koenigsegg Jesko caught fire and it was compelled district in Athens, Greece. This incident happened recently during large dive event through the country. Within hours, Tucker Carlson opened his evening broadcast with a single line, "There's something very strange going on with this car." The company immediately launched an investigation into the engine failure. What Koenigsegg found buried inside the wreckage was something they didn't expect and left the engineers speechless. A hypercar like no other. When the Koenigsegg Jesko burst onto the scene at the Geneva International Motor Show, the world didn't witness the unveiling of a car. It witnessed the unveiling of a manifesto. This wasn't just a vehicle. It was the physical embodiment of Christian von Koenigsegg's rebellion against compromise. A declaration that the ceiling of automotive innovation could always be raised. Named after his father, Jessica von Koenigsegg, the car carried emotional weight beneath its carbon fiber skin. But sentimentality wasn't what made jaws drop. It was the staggering, almost heretical specs. At the Jesko's core was an all-new version of Koenigsegg's legendary 5.0L twin-turbocharged V8, now reworked to defy thermodynamic convention. With a flat plane crank, larger turbos, and a 20L carbon fiber air tank to eliminate turbo lag, the engine produced a mind-bending 1,600 horsepower when fueled by E85 biofuel, revving cleanly to 8,500 revolutions per minute. It didn't roar. It screamed like a fighter jet mid-takeoff, caged inside a titanium shell. Then came the aerodynamics. The Jesko was forged in a fluid dynamics battlefield. A gigantic swan neck rear wing dynamically adjusted based on speed and steering angle. The front featured active flaps and massive ducts, while the underbody was a maze of vortex channels that generated up to 1,400 kilograms of downforce at top speed. Handling was governed by a next-gen triplex suspension system both at the front and rear, a Koenigsegg-exclusive concept involving a central third damper that corrected pitch and roll in real time. But perhaps the most spellbinding version of this machine came dressed in something that wasn't clothing at all, the Koenigsegg Naked Carbon Edition. No paint, no clear coat, just bare carbon fiber, painstakingly sanded and polished over 800 man-hours until each filament glistened like obsidian under sunlight. Only a handful of these were produced. Each one a bespoke artifact, coveted by collectors, whispered about in supercar forums, and often too valuable to be driven. But the Jesko was always meant to move. It was engineered to conquer tarmac and annihilate track records. Every atom of it pulsed with potential energy like a symphony of titanium pistons and airblade dynamics held together by digital wizardry and human obsession. And then came the ignition. When the first Jesko Absolute variant rolled out, no one knew that the very engineering brilliance that made it a legend might also hide a silent flaw, a crack in the armor, an issue so tiny it would go unnoticed until it was too late. You can't bottle lightning without risking it blowing the world apart. And Koenigsegg was about to find out in the worst way possible. Fire on the coastline on June 15, 2024 at approximately 10:03 a.m., a Koenigsegg Jesko Nur edition ignited on the winding roads outside Nafplio, Greece during the prestigious 6-6 Europe Tour, an event that celebrates the finest in speed, engineering, and automotive artistry. This was no ordinary road trip. It was a pilgrimage for the world's elite car enthusiasts, a day dedicated to experiencing the best of what engineering could offer. The Jesko, delivered only 9 days prior, was already a symbol of anticipation, a masterpiece of Swedish hypercar engineering waiting to be unleashed on the road. This particular Jesko had been entrusted to a prominent Spanish collector, one who had waited over 3 years for its arrival. With only a handful of these vehicles in existence, each one represented an apex of innovation and performance. As the car cruised along the sun-drenched coastline, everything seemed perfect. The dry road, the warm tires, the engine humming in perfect harmony with the car's lightweight superstructure technology. The driving conditions were ideal, and the car was performing flawlessly. As the driver downshifted for a mild curve, barely enough lateral G to challenge the car's impressive grip, something catastrophic occurred. A small puff of smoke began trailing from the engine bay, almost unnoticed at first. Then came the sudden flicker of flames from the rear diffuser. In less than 40 seconds, the fire spread, racing through the back half of the vehicle with alarming speed and ferocity. By the time anyone could react, the entire rear of the Jesko was engulfed in flames. The car, regarded as one of the most sophisticated hypercars ever built, with its flawless blend of cutting-edge design, precision engineering, and brutal performance, was reduced to nothing more than a smoldering wreck. Koenigsegg Jesko caught fire and it was completely destroyed in Athens, Greece. This incident happened recently during a large drive event through the country. The inferno raged on for less than 3 minutes. Yet in that short span, it consumed the entirety of the vehicle's rear section, leaving only carbon, titanium, and melted alloys in its wake. Eyewitness footage captured by attendees of the event spread across social media like wildfire. Videos of the fire rapidly circulated, leaving the automotive world stunned. How could this happen? The Jesko, regarded as a paragon of Swedish engineering, precision, and safety, had failed in the most catastrophic manner possible. What shocked the community wasn't just the fire, it was the sheer impossibility of it. There had been no crash, no collision, no fuel spill, no driver error, just fire. Spontaneous, violent, and utterly destructive under what seemed to be the most controlled, ideal driving conditions imaginable. The incident sent shockwaves through Koenigsegg's inner circle. For a company that prided itself on its meticulous attention to detail, the failure was incomprehensible. This wasn't a prototype or a press mule. This was a finished production-certified Jesko, fully inspected and approved for the road. How could such a thing have happened? Had been missed during the countless hours of testing, the rigorous quality control processes, and the obsessive scrutiny that defined the brand. The news broke quickly, and an email was sent with the blunt subject line, "Immediate action required, Jesko operations suspended." It wasn't a recall. It wasn't a corporate-speak message meant to soften the blow. It was a direct order, urgent and severe. The subject line said it all, immediate action. The message that followed left no room for interpretation. Do not start. Do not move. Do not touch. Within 24 hours, Koenigsegg issued a sweeping Do Not Drive order, DNDO, for every Jesko worldwide. This was not a recall, which would follow bureaucratic procedures and legal protocols. This was something far more serious, a worldwide immobilization of every Jesko that had been delivered. It was a directive so rare and so extreme that it left everyone in the automotive industry in disbelief. Of the 125 Jeskos originally slated for production, 28 had already reached high-profile collectors across Europe, the Middle East, and North America. 14 others sat in pristine delivery bays, awaiting their owners' eager hands. Some were still shrink-wrapped in their sleek carbon fiber shells, untouched by the outside world. All were immobilized immediately. Koenigsegg's dealer network scrambled to comply with the order. GPS trackers, which were originally installed for theft prevention, were now being repurposed to confirm the inactivity of every car. Factory personnel were dispatched globally to verify the status of each vehicle. Even press cars and test mules, typically seen in the hands of industry insiders, were grounded. The official statement from Koenigsegg was unsettlingly vague. The cause of the fire, they said, was currently unknown. But behind the scenes, something far more serious was unfolding. Engineers were visibly shaken. Whispers leaked through the halls of Koenigsegg's Angelholm headquarters. This wasn't just a case of bad wiring or a faulty connection. It wasn't a simple fix or a minor problem. It was something deeper, something that had bypassed every layer of fail-safe design in the most meticulously engineered car on Earth. Something had slipped through the cracks. Something that no one could have anticipated. The Jesko wasn't just another hypercar. It was a statement, a triumph of engineering, design, and ambition. Every part of it was crafted with a singular purpose, to push the boundaries of what was possible. Now, with a single order, all of those cars, those nearly $3 million machines, had been reduced to museum pieces, grounded and immobilized. The hypercar world froze. Collectors waited in limbo. Engineers went silent. And the public, eagerly watching from the sidelines, asked the only question that mattered. What could possibly be so serious that it would justify grounding a machine of such rarefied pedigree before the truth was even known? The answer, no one knew yet. But whatever it was worse than anyone could have imagined. The heart of the machine. The scorched Jesko from Greece was not returned as wreckage. It was brought back as evidence, flown in under cold chain protocol to prevent further degradation. The vehicle arrived at the Koenigsegg Advanced Engineering Center in Angelholm like a fallen astronaut returning from a failed mission. The carbon fiber shell was warped and twisted, peeled back like torn skin, exposing the fragile, burnt remains beneath. The magnesium cradle was melted, deformed by intense heat that had reached temperatures far beyond any conceivable threshold. Yet amid the destruction, there was still something to recover: the data. Christian von Koenigsegg himself authorized what was known as a Level Z teardown, a term reserved exclusively for catastrophic failures that shook the very foundation of the company's engineering reputation. This was not just another quality check. This was a digital autopsy, one that would unravel the mystery of a $3 million inferno. The process began with the scans. Every component, every curve of the structure was mapped with cutting-edge 3D LiDAR imaging. Infrared tomography revealed heat signatures embedded deep within the carbon shell. Structural resonance analysis, the sort typically reserved for crash tests, echoed through the chambers as they sought to find where the heat had started. And it became clear the fire hadn't originated in the engine bay or the exhaust system. It hadn't come from the fuel tank where heat and pressure could have overwhelmed the safety limits. No, this fire had started much deeper inside the monocoque, behind the firewall. A place that was supposed to be thermally stable, isolated from the mechanical stresses of the car's moving parts. A place that was supposed to remain inert. As the team peeled back layer after layer, it became even more apparent that this wasn't just a fire. It was something worse. The next step was reviewing the car's software logs. The Jesko's ECU, engine control unit, was one of the most sophisticated systems in any hypercar, and certainly the most advanced in Koenigsegg's production vehicles. Its triple redundant CAN, controller area network, systems were designed to record every minute detail: the voltage drops, pressure anomalies, thermal fluctuations, even gyroscopic forces on suspension links. This was a car built to monitor itself in ways that no vehicle had before. And yet when the logs were accessed, the results were chilling. There was nothing. No thermal spike, no voltage drop, no electrical arcs. The logs were pristine, perfectly preserved. To the car's own brain, everything had been fine right up until it was engulfed in flame. The fact that the car's onboard systems had failed to detect the fire sent a wave of unease through the engineering team. In the world of hypercars, even the smallest irregularities would trigger alerts. Fault lights would blink, the car would enter limp mode, or safety protocols would activate. But in this case, silence. The car had been blind to its own impending destruction. The thought was simply too disturbing to entertain. Theories ran wild. Some speculated about external sabotage. Maybe someone had tampered with the vehicle, hacking into the system, bypassing the safety features. Others feared an exotic failure mode, something buried so deep within the design that it never triggered detection. But there was a far darker possibility, one that struck a nerve among the engineers. What if it wasn't a failure at all? What if something was telling the system not to report the failure, maybe a quiet presence buried deep within the hardware? An anomaly that made the Jesko blind to its own demise. An undetectable ghost. And then the team found something truly unsettling. The blind spot. The investigation into the fire in Greece had consumed the Koenigsegg team for weeks, a non-stop effort that demanded the utmost precision. The engineers were committed to uncovering the root cause, sifting through every detail of the vehicle. At this point, they were practically sure that someone had willingly sabotaged the car to hurt the company. They only had two questions left. Who and how? However, they would soon find out that the truth was even more disturbing than any conspiracy theory. When the engineers turned their attention to the pressurized hydraulic system, it was by chance. They were sure everything was fine there given that the car's system hadn't picked up on any hydraulic failure. However, what they discovered stunned everyone in the room. Hidden within the intricate network of hydraulic components at the rear of the car where the fire had ignited was a compromised hydraulic hose. It was positioned in such a way that even after multiple tests it had managed to evade detection. This hose, a seemingly trivial part of the complex system, had been the catalyst for the disaster. What had initially seemed like an isolated issue quickly revealed itself as something far more dangerous, a simple mistake in the installation. It was a flaw so minor, yet it had set in motion a series of catastrophic events. The realization hit the team like a bolt. The once immaculate Jesko, a pinnacle of automotive engineering, had been jeopardized by something as unassuming as a hydraulic hose. The years of meticulous design, of pushing the boundaries of engineering excellence, had been upended by a single overlooked detail. The team stared at the vehicle, speechless. How could something so small, so seemingly insignificant have slipped through the cracks? How could they have missed it? "This is unbelievable," one engineer muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. They had all been ready to blame the competition, perhaps even hackers from the other side of the world for the incident. And yet the real problem came from within the company, from a compromised hose so small and well hidden within the compartment that no one had noticed it. The question lingered in the air: how did something so critical go undetected? The experiment. Realizing that the fire might not have been an isolated incident, Koenigsegg's engineers knew they needed to get to the bottom of this. They couldn't afford any uncertainties. The investigation deepened and the next step was clear. A controlled experiment was necessary. The engineers replicated the conditions that had led to the fire in Greece for all returned cars: high temperatures, high-speed runs, and the same road conditions. It was a complex and difficult task, but they knew it had to be done. And what they discovered gave them literal chills. It all started when Jesko H number 023 was brought in for testing. The vehicle was pushed to its limits, with each minute that passed drawing them closer to a dreaded conclusion. And within moments of reaching the critical temperature threshold, it was evident the same failure had occurred again. The cooling fans, integral to managing the hydraulic pressure, failed to engage. As the system reached its breaking point, the hydraulic hose, just as before, began to leak. Before anyone could react, the fire was back. The engineers watched, unable to do anything but witness the unfolding disaster. This wasn't a one-off failure. It wasn't a single rogue vehicle. No, this was something more systemic. The issue was inherent in the design of the hydraulic system, a flaw that extended beyond just one car. The room was filled with a heavy silence. The problem was clear now. The compromised hydraulic hose wasn't just a defect in one vehicle. It was a failure across multiple units. Jesko #023 had mirrored the fire in Greece, confirming their worst fears. Now all that was left to do was to find out exactly how many more cars were compromised. The echoes of failure. With the scope of the failure now understood, Koenigsegg wasted no time in acting. The company's CEO, Christian von Koenigsegg, issued a public statement acknowledging the flaw. He was calm, collected, but the weight of the situation was clear in his words. "We need to be sure every car is perfect," he said. "We are doing everything we can to make this right." Koenigsegg admitted that the issue had been traced back to the hydraulic hoses installed in the rear of the vehicles. It was something so simple, yet so dangerous. In his statement, Christian shared the company's shock. "We could never have imagined such a failure in our own design." The weight of their oversight hung heavily in the air. "It's humbling, and we are deeply sorry." But Koenigsegg wasn't just stopping there. The engineers, aware that this was a critical turning point for the company, had already begun work on a software update that would immediately detect any pressure drop or leak within the hydraulic system. This update would shut down the system automatically before any dangerous situation could develop. It was their only way to guarantee that this would never happen again. The final part of the announcement came with an unexpected personal touch. Koenigsegg reached out to the owner of the car that had caught fire in Greece. The company offered a replacement vehicle, an entirely new Jesko, while assuring the owner of full support throughout the ordeal. While the collector expressed gratitude and continued trust in the brand, there was an undeniable truth: the Jesko's flawless reputation had been shaken. A car that had been hailed as a masterpiece was now a cautionary tale. The next step was to inspect the remaining cars in the field to confirm whether the issue had affected all of them. Yet despite the company's best efforts to contain the situation, the damage had already been done. The automotive world had witnessed the failure in the most public and catastrophic way possible. The Jesko, a shining example of engineering precision, was no longer seen through the lens of perfection. What had once been hailed as one of the greatest feats in automotive history was now a sobering reminder of the unpredictable nature of engineering, the consequences of minor oversights, and the vulnerability of even the most carefully crafted machines. For Koenigsegg, it was a moment of reckoning. The compromised hydraulic hose had not only jeopardized the safety of their vehicles but had also exposed a dangerous vulnerability in their production process. Reactions in the rear view. The fire in Greece sparked more than just a technical investigation. It ignited a firestorm of reactions from the global automotive community. Social media and online forums exploded with debate as car enthusiasts, collectors, and industry experts weighed in on what had happened and what it meant for the future of the Jesko and Koenigsegg. Many fans immediately rallied behind Koenigsegg, emphasizing the company's long history of pushing the envelope in automotive engineering. For them, it wasn't about the mistake. It was about how the company would respond. One longtime follower of the brand pointed out that it was not the mistakes that should be judged but how a company handles them. This sentiment was echoed by others who expressed their confidence that Koenigsegg would learn from this setback and continue to lead the industry with innovation. At the same time, there was a significant outcry from those who felt betrayed by what they saw as a glaring failure. For years, Koenigsegg had been synonymous with perfection. And for many, the idea that a minor flaw like a hydraulic hose could lead to such a catastrophic fire was difficult to accept. The disappointment was palpable, especially among those who had placed their trust in a brand that had been lauded for its precision engineering. Despite the criticisms, Koenigsegg's transparency in addressing the issue won praise from many. Enthusiasts noted the company's swift response, including the recall and the steps they took to ensure that no other vehicles were affected. One comment summed up the reaction of many by highlighting how rare it was for a company to openly admit a fault and take immediate corrective action. This level of communication, some fans argued, was part of what made Koenigsegg stand out from other high-end automakers. In the end, while some fans felt disappointed and worried about the future of the Jesko, others saw this as an opportunity for Koenigsegg to prove its commitment to excellence. The voice of the people was mixed, with both criticism and support fueling the ongoing conversation about what had happened and what's next for Jess and Koenigsegg as a whole. What would you do if your dream car turned out to be imperfect? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching this video with us and catch you in the next one.